verdict is in. It is official. I mean, yesterday we were talking about how 4 of the 5 counts had been decided upon. The verdict was in, but still a question mark for this morning. What could come of that final one, count 1, racketeering conspiracy? And only about an hour into deliberations this morning, the jury returns a verdict. And let me tell you, there was a lot going on. Up and down the row that I'm on right here, it's filled with media. And we're all sitting down, waiting, what's going to happen, updating our phones. Is there any sort of, news coming? And all of a sudden I hear next to me, ABC, we've got a verdict. Everyone else, here's a verdict. And by the way, I think we have a court update. So I'm going to go back to Chris. Tell us what we know.
Yes, court update coming in. Again, we have a verdict in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers are still meeting with him in private as we wait for the verdict to be read in court. We know that Combs' mom and his sister are in the courtroom. We saw members of his family, his children were there. They actually prayed with Sean Diddy Combs inside of the courtroom this morning before members of his family left, which was probably about 15, 20 minutes ago. And then Sean Combs went to a separate room where he was going to wait out these deliberations. I want to bring in our panel of experts who are with me this morning, starting at 9 o'clock. Candace Kelly, legal analyst, and then we have William Corman, who's a criminal defense attorney. Both are joining us. So very quick, since I last spoke to you, that verdicts come in. Just Candace, what's your reaction? I mean, we were thinking potentially that this was going to be a hung jury. We're still working on getting those guests. But again, we were talking this morning because of yesterday, the jury used the term unpersuadable when saying that that's where they were at on this racketeering conspiracy charge that Sean Combs was facing, even though they were able to find unanimous verdicts on 4 counts facing Diddy. But here we are, just an hour in, going home, sleeping on it. The 12 members of the jury returning a verdict. We're going to work on getting our guests up. But Sierra, walk us through, as you've covered this every day, of what makes this racketeering charge so complicated and why it seemed the jury, at least early on in these deliberations, they were having an issue coming to a verdict on this charge leading up to about 5 minutes ago.
Well, I'm really not surprised that it was count 1 that was the hung jury or the confusion, right? Because it is the most complicated of all of them, racketeering conspiracy. And this is something we've talked at length about with the predicate crimes, things like arson, bribery, forced labor, kidnapping, and it's got to be confusing. I mean, for me, who doesn't have a law degree, I've been covering this case for quite some time now. Even at times I waver and I'm like, wait, what is this about? Let's, make sure to go back and really think about it. And I think for jurors, that's what it's got to be, right? It's now become their job to figure this out. However, they weren't watching P. Diddy before all of this. They might have seen his name in the news, but they weren't really zoning in on racketeering conspiracy. And I think the biggest issue in all of this is likely that it's a conspiracy, right? Multiple people had to take part in this conspiracy, and yet there was only one person charged.
Breaking news. Official verdict is in. Official verdict is in. Breaking news.
We were not expecting this verdict. P. Diddy's family walked out of the courtroom. I watched him go. Everyone thought, okay, that's the way it's going to be. And all of a sudden, they're coming right back in. We're getting the rush. And again, it just wasn't expected after 1 hour of deliberation this morning.
Court update again. Sean Combs has entered the courtroom. He looked at his family. Again, his mom and his sister are there right now. He looked at his family, nodded his head, and flashed a small smile. Let's bring in our experts right now.
He about to get off, bro.
William Corman.
He about to get off, y'all. He's smiling. He said he's smiling. Let's go to Inner City Press real quick, gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Good morning, man. Good morning from the East Coast to West Coast. It's official. The official verdict is in, man. Top of the top. It's official. It's official. It's exactly. Hold on. Sean Combs had been brought back into the courtroom by U.S. Marshals. He is seated with Brian Still on his left, Tenny Gorgas on his right, family in the second row. We have received a note, 952 it reads, we have reached the verdict on all counts. They reached the verdict. They reached the verdict. Here we go, smash the lights, top of the top. They reached the verdict, y'all. We about to read it. We about to hear it. Top of it. Here we go. Top of it.
One side compared to the other.
Any second now.
On this charge, the 12 jurors. William, what's your reaction that they were able to, in about an hour today, find a verdict?
This is why I never bet on how long it's going to take to reach a verdict.
Right.
Because I think both Candace and I were looking at noon or a little bit after noon,
Yes.
and that was about 6 minutes ago, so we're both way off. I agree with Candace. I think that giving them the night off, giving them the pause, allowed whoever it was that needed to do some internal soul searching, whoever it was that needed to marshal their arguments to convince whatever holdouts there were, they did their job, and so now here we are. Again, as I mentioned a little while ago, sitting around waiting for a verdict is very taxing. Nothing worse than sitting around waiting for a verdict is when you know there is a verdict and you're sitting around waiting for the verdict to be read. This is about as high drama and about as tense as it gets. I've been in this position many times. It is an uncomfortable feeling because you're trying to read tea leaves that simply don't exist. They are sitting in that courtroom right now, just staring at the walls, waiting for the jurors to come in, waiting for everyone to reassemble. And it's tense and it's tough and it's taxing.
And let's get to this update. The judge says we received a note at 9:52 a.m. and it reads, "We have reached a verdict on all counts."
They about to read it.
Anything
They about to read
address
it.
before we bring out the jury? Both sides say no. The judge says maintain order while the verdict is being read and until we have the jury out. Candace, walk us through. We don't have cameras in the courtroom, but what is going to happen next?
Well, listen, this gives time for the family to reconvene as we...
Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. We got a verdict, y'all. Hold on, let me read it because I'm on Inner City Press. Shout out to Inner City Press. If y'all want to, they are actually the most accurate, up to date because they're literally in the courtroom. Let's see. 2 minutes. Okay. They hit him with the all rise. They about to read it. They about to read it. They about to read the verdict, y'all. They said Diddy cracked a smile. They say Diddy cracking smiles. And I don't mean like Kevin Lau.
courtroom. As we know, though, Chris, that is very difficult to maintain. I am sure that regardless of what the verdict is, there is going to be
Smash
a
the
reaction.
lights.
Because any combination of an outcome guilty...
Hey, first and foremost, good morning to everybody. Good morning to everybody across the globe that's in the chat. We got almost 100 in here. Y'all smash that like. We almost got 100 people. It's official. It's breaking news, yo. The verdict is officially in on all counts. We about to hear exactly what happens. They say Diddy just cracked a smile. Let me give y'all a little bit. Actually, let's see, because it's up to the second. Shout out to Inner City Press, man. It's up to the second, bro. Up to the second. 23 seconds. We have received your note. Jury number 5. Have you reached the verdict? We have. It's unanimous. Yo, this nigga Diddy finna walk, bro. Oh shit, is Diddy finna walk? Is Diddy finna walk though? Is he finna walk, y'all? Hold on, this nigga Diddy.
When looking at count 1, racketeering conspiracy.
They have a unanimous.
They have to find the
unanimous. They have reached a unanimous decision, y'all. We about to learn right now.
arson, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and so on. Then they also have to find beyond a reasonable doubt that he was part of an enterprise, and the enterprise was created for the purpose of committing criminal acts, that the enterprise itself was created for the purpose of continued criminal conduct. We know from the notes yesterday that this is what the jury was hung up on, and we know that after 52 minutes or so of deliberating today, whatever they were hung up on now has been resolved.
And we have received your note, says the judge. Juror number 5, have you reached a verdict? He is the foreman. Juror number 5 says we have. The judge says, is it unanimous? Juror number 5 says it is. The judge says, please provide the verdict.
Not guilty. Hold on.
The deputy.
Hold on. It's official. Hold on. It's official. Count number 1, he's not guilty for RICO. He's not guilty for RICO. He is not guilty for sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. He's guilty for transportation for prostitution. This nigga Diddy just did the Harlem Shake, y'all. This nigga just did. This nigga Diddy not guilty on the RICO. Not guilty on the RICO. Oh, I told you, bro. I told you. Because why would they? I'm like, why? Yes, I'm like, man, they not trying to give him that fucking RICO, bro. Guilty is official. Not guilty on the RICO. Not guilty sex trafficking, Cassie, but guilty on transportation for prostitution. So they're gonna hit him with a couple. He gonna do a little bid. It's official. It's officially in, y'all. It's officially in. Y'all heard it here first. It's officially in, bro. Hold on. Let's see the other. What's the other counts? Let's see the other counts. Let's see the other counts. It's officially in, y'all. It's looking like they split.
Sean Combs was praying with his family.
He
And
beat
here
the
is the
RICO.
verdict. The judge said
He beat the RICO, y'all. This nigga Diddy beat the fucking RICO, bro. He beat the fucking. So the only thing, so he's not guilty of. He also is not guilty of sex trafficking, 50 Cent's baby mama, but he is guilty. So all they convicted him of was transportation for prostitution. He got 2 counts. He got confused. He's found guilty of transportation of prostitution, but he beat the motherfucking RICO, y'all. He Harlem Shake do the fucking RICO, gang. He beat it, bro. He beat the fucking
William
RICO.
to what the
He beat
jury
it.
has found in the case against Sean Combs.
He beat the RICO. It's official. Diddy beat the RICO. Look, they running out. Diddy beat the fucking RICO. He beat the RICO. Diddy beat the RICO. Diddy beat the RICO. RICO Suave. Diddy beat the fucking RICO, bro. He did it. Now, he got convicted for the other shit, for the transportation prostitution. He buy pussy, I guess. How many years can you get for transportation and prostitution? Look at Uda. Look at Uda. Shout out my dog Uda.
I tapped you in the black emotion. No RICO, man. No RICO, but he got rock still. I think 20 still, I think, right? Damn. But no RICO.
He beat the RICO. He beat the RICO, y'all. It's official. You heard it here first. This nigga Diddy done beat the motherfucking RICO. He beat the Freako, aka the RICO, nigga. It's official, nigga. He got 2. He did get found guilty of the transportation of prostitution. He did get found guilty of the transportation of the prostitution, but he beat the RICO, y'all. It's official. Diddy beat the fucking RICO, and goddamn it on. He gonna keep. Don't stop. You can't stop. Won't stop. Goddamn it. He goddamn it. I don't know what to say. That's what happened when you got money. Goddamn it. Not guilty. Hold on, let me change the title, y'all. I'm gonna go back right now. He only got found guilty of 2 of the counts. But the RICO is one that he didn't oh fuck. Hold on, y'all. I'm trying to. Yeah, he found not guilty of the RICO, but he got 2 guilty charges of the he got 2 guilty. Hold on, I'm about to go back to it right now. I just want to change the title, y'all. Not guilty of the RICO. He's not guilty of the RICO. Diddy is not guilty of the RICO. It's official. It is official. Diddy is not guilty of the RICO.
Tell me which marshal will break your balls.
Diddy is not guilty of the RICO.
Federal prison, but again, it's still very, very serious.
Does this mean that Sean Combs potentially could walk out of the courthouse today and then sentencing be pushed to a later date, Candace?
He's not walking out today. He's got a lot to do in terms of actually going back to the courthouse, and what they want to make sure doesn't happen is that
time served on the guilty
he's
shit.
not out in order to do what they thought he might do, which was tamper with witnesses. If they choose to charge this any further, he's not going anywhere.
It's official. It's official. Diddy might walk home today, though.
Placed somewhere, as you said, it could be.
He's not guilty of the RICO. They only found him guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. And he probably gonna get time served for that, bro. I'm just gonna keep it. They might put him on probation. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
What's next is that there is a sentencing hearing that will take place probably 30 to 60 days from now.
Good morning.
In the meantime, both sides will marshal their arguments. They will put forth sentencing memorandum. The defense counsel.
Oh shit, my fault, y'all. Hold on, I want to see the walkout.
Together memorandum. The prosecution put together a memorandum, and also the probation department, the pretrial.
It's official. It's official. Yeah, Diddy might go home today, bro. They probably get that nigga either time served for them two transportation of that doesn't sound too. If he got none of the sex trafficking, he got none of the RICO, none of that other shit. He only got found guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. And he been locked up for how long? And they probably gonna give him time served and some probation, bro. They said he smiled. They just said, let me go back to inner city press, y'all. It's official.
Remember him? He was like, he worked, he was a federal marshal who walked around all the time. Oh, okay. And, he was one of the real friendly guys. He was working here in this building. So I don't know how long. He retired 4 years ago. He's going to try to work at the CBS.
On the pool page, so no.
No, it's not, bro. He got found guilty only of 2 counts. He only got found guilty of 2 counts. Whoever that was, it's not false news. He beat the RICO. They found him not guilty of the RICO and not guilty of sex trafficking. He only been found guilty of transportation for prostitution. So I don't know what the fuck you talking about. I'm literally like looking at it right now. Like, let me go back to inner city. Shout out to inner city. Let's go back to inner city. Yeah, it's official. It's official. Man, Diddy didn't beat the RICO. It's official. He spanked the RICO. We waiting on them. We waiting on the walkout right now of whoever's going to walk out. I don't think he's going to exactly walk out right now because he got to get sentenced and shit.
We signed off at the end of last hour. When Diddy's kids left, you saw his sons, his twin daughters. They got in that Sprinter van and they headed out after praying with their dad. And then he goes to wait out the jury deliberations. I know his mom and his sister were in the courtroom, but did you see them get back? Were they there for this verdict?
I believe so that they were. And I'm telling you, straightforwardly, everything was a mess when we heard the verdict. Elizabeth Milner got up, ran inside. I jumped in, plugged in my microphone and my IFB, ready to go. So it was almost like a frenzy here. You can kind of feel the vibes. And that's what I'm trying to convey to you all, by the way, that here everyone can kind of feel the vibes that something wild is going on. I did see the commotion behind me. I did see the Sprinter van. But honestly, I was plugging in during all of this, so I didn't physically see them with my eyes. But I do believe that they were there in the courtroom.
And if you're just joining us here on Law and Crime on the live stream, it's great to be with you. We have a verdict in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, and I want to read through this verdict for you once again, just so we're all on the same page. The judge the deputy, in the matter of the U.S. versus Combs, count 1, juror number 5, the foreman says not guilty. Sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura, not guilty. Transportation for prostitution, guilty. Sex trafficking of the victim that went by the pseudonym Jane, not guilty. And then transportation for prostitution of Jane, guilty. Have another court update coming in. The judge asking the media not to question jurors about their deliberations. Jurors, you can contact our chambers. You gave up a lot these 10 weeks. It is inspiring. You worked together, rain or shine. You answered the call of public service. That should give us hope. The judge then says, I need to address a few matters with the lawyers. Then I will come back to meet with you, jurors. All rise to the jury. Then the jurors then exit the courtroom, and the judge says, I'll hear any application then about sentencing date. Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, says he should be released. Combs Agnifilo says he is no longer charged with sex trafficking or racketeering. His plane has been chartered. It is in Maui. He does not have access to his plane. This is his first conviction, and it is a prostitution offense. He should be released. William Corman, criminal defense attorney, as someone in this line of work, how strong of an argument that is that Sean Combs should be released?
The problem is this. Combs has a significant amount of assets, and if Sean Combs chose not to come back to court to be sentenced, he would be able to do that. So again, correct, he has no criminal record. correct. He's been found guilty only of the lowest hanging fruit, as we've been calling it. I think it's an argument that can be made. Obviously, the prosecution is going to argue against it vociferously. I'd be surprised if the judge went along with it. But candidly, I think we've all been a little surprised by what's happened in the past few hours. But again, I don't anticipate the judge will allow it.
Mark Agnifilo continuing on here saying his family is here and could sign a bond. He should be released today to go back and live at 2 Star Island, which is in Miami.
Wow.
Judge says, this is just coming up right now. I will hear from the government.
Diddy is, hey, y'all, breaking news. Diddy, he walking out the courtroom today, I think, y'all. They about to get him a bond. He about to get a... God damn it. But he guilty of the transportation for prostitution charge, though. His family is here and could sign a bond. He should be released today to go back and live at 2 Star Island. This is just coming up. Right. Okay, that's what we just... Okay, you proposing $1 million bond? Yes. And travel to Florida. Diddy is coming home, y'all. The U.S. opposes his release. Okay, hold on. A person found guilty shall be detained until the judicial officer. So the prosecution, I'm gonna say prostitution. Prosecution doesn't want him released, but it's looking like his family is pushing to his defense is pushing for him to get released until he gets sentenced for his the 2 that he found guilty. But Diddy is gonna be. It looked like Diddy gonna be coming home today, yo. Diddy gonna be they're gonna probably give $1 million bond. They're probably gonna give him a bond, bro. He been sitting. Then he get how long he been sitting for? Like a year now? Close to a year? Diddy about to come home. Until his sentencing. I think he about to come home, y'all.
Oil. But what is
Why
this
not, though?
RICO and what does it mean? And is it being unfair?
If he's waiting for sentencing, they're probably gonna let him wait. Like he didn't beat the major charges. All he gotta do is wait. And that bro, Diddy beat the feds. He beat the feds, bro. Diddy beat the fucking feds. It's official. Now, he got found guilty of the transportation, but the RICO charge, not guilty. Sex trafficking, not guilty of none of that. And they talking about, hold on, let's see right now, 22 seconds. All right. The defendant faces a maximum, so he's facing 20 years now. So the prosecution just told the judge that the defendant faces a maximum sentence of 20 years. Even while faced with his case, he assaulted Jane here in New York, preparing to surrender. He had drugs in his hotel room, was ready to commit this same offense. So the prosecution is trying to use everything not to let him get bond, but Diddy's probably about to get bond, yo. Now, if he get 20, I don't know if he's going to get 20. Facing 20 and getting 20 is different. You know what I'm saying? Now, if they smack him, that'd be crazy if they smack him with 20 years or some wild, or 15 years or something. That'd be crazy for transportation of prostitution, but it's official. Like a ref with a whistle. This nigga Diddy beat the feds, bro. Let's see. I'm trying to keep the up to date. Let's see. So they proposing $1 million bond, and he gonna live on his. Okay, hold on. Fuck. This nigga Diddy about to come home, y'all. Y'all seen it here, right? Y'all seen it first. I told you, I was like, it's gonna be crazy. Like, that nigga gonna leave up out that motherfucker. You hear me? Hold on, dude. What's the name? Just delete all that shit. Okay. Judge said, I'm not going to resolve this second. I need to review the statutes. Mr. Comey, do you have a case in which bail was denied after a conviction under the Mann Act? So they're trying to, now they're trying to see if they're going to let him come home. They're looking for a bond.
Points obviously hit home with the jury.
And also not guilty on sex trafficking of the victim who went by the pseudonym Jane, who also there were text messages that the defense used to argue that these were consensual relationships. There's been a lot of talk, Candace. I want to say hello to the 55,000 people joining us right now for this coverage of the verdicts in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. There's been a lot of talk about just how good Sean Combs' defense team was, that this was the all-star dream team cast for a defense team. What did they do that is different than the typical defense attorney that you see in a courtroom?
Present witnesses, it was kind of like they did, in that they were able to jab holes into the witnesses on cross-examination. So really they had witnesses speaking on their behalf. If you look on it that way, that you are my witnesses, and now I'm going to show inconsistencies, now I'm going to show bias, now I'm going to show that you are a money grabber in this particular one. Now I'm going to show that the government is this case after Sean Combs. So I think that there were a lot of opportunities, and they did do a very good job. On the other hand, so did the prosecution. So I think that that's really kind of the takeaway.
Shout out my nigga.
When you look at these attorneys that were great across the board.
Rod Davis,
that was one of the
VA
things
shit,
that
nigga.
was
You already
really
know that.
spectacular about this.
Rich City,
you
nigga.
saw fine attorneys on
That
both
old
sides
shit,
doing very, very good work. Of course, Sean Combs is in that position to afford an attorney, and
About to come out. They about to come out,
legal
y'all.
journey is going to look this way. But the defense did do a very good job during closing. Mark Agnifilo was very interactive, comedic, really kind of brought light to the fact that, you know what, maybe this is, not as big as you think. So we got Astroglide off the streets, right? That's what he said. Big deal. Oh, wow, aren't they great? So he really kind of made light of what this really could translate as when you really break down what he said is just a modern-day love story. Some people might laugh at that, but he did connect with the jury in that way. With the same token, so did the prosecution, but the jury made their choice.
Another update from court, the judge asking the defense, are you proposing $1 million bond? Mark Agnifilo says, Diddy's defense attorney, yes, and travel to Florida, New York, and Los Angeles. Then Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey says the U.S. opposes his release. A person found guilty shall be detained until the judicial officer finds he is not likely to flee or be a danger. Comey continues on saying the defendant faces a maximum sentence of 20 years. Even while faced with this case, he assaulted Jane. Here in New York, preparing to surrender, he had drugs in his hotel room, was ready to commit the same offense. The judge then continues on saying, I am not going to resolve this second. I need to review the statutes. Ms. Comey, do you have a case in which bail was denied after a conviction under the Mann Act? You may confer and come back. We'd planned to be here the whole day. So this, we do have more business to attend to, even though this verdict has been read. Let's go back to Sierra Gillespie outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Sierra, what more are you seeing outside the courthouse? And just as you're processing how all of this played out, as someone who covers celebrity for our Law and Crime YouTube channel Scandal, how will people, and time will tell, but how does this impact Diddy's legacy compared to if he came back as guilty for racketeering conspiracy?
Wow, Chris, there's a lot to digest. Again, I am still shocked the fact that we have a verdict after 1 hour of deliberation this morning. And like I said, we're here live on our live stream, ready to go and bring you the latest, as Chris has been doing so eloquently, getting you guys all up to speed. So what's happening is I'm standing here facing the camera with the courthouse behind me, and I swear to you, every time I turn back to look and see, okay, what's going on? Am I going on air? Am I not? Every time I turn back around, there is more people. I'm going to guess 200 people. Could be more that are just surrounding the front of the courthouse there as these arguments about bail are going back and forth. You can feel the vibes here, right? And I think going to your next question, Chris, about what does this mean for P. Diddy's legacy, overall, I think this is a win for him, especially the fact that at first this is a hung jury when we're talking about racketeering conspiracy. Either side, we aren't able to decide. Maybe if it ends in a hung jury, there could be a retrial down the line. We don't know. It's still up in the air. But the fact that it's not guilty, they're major win. The fact that it's not guilty on 2 more of the charges, the fact that he is only found guilty on the transportation to engage in prostitution, I think that's a major win for him. And especially in the way that celebrity lives are different than the ordinary people, quote unquote. And I'll call myself an ordinary person. My life is a little bit different than P. Diddy's. But I mean, as far as all of that goes, honestly, they talked about this during the ongoing trial. They talked about how there was another famous rapper who took part in these freak-offs, with the transportation to engage in prostitution, kind of going to that. Now, I'm not saying this person has been charged at all, but what I'm trying to say is that in the celebrity world, this is more acceptable. This is just something that happens. It's not something that people usually get charged for. So honestly, P. Diddy's reputation is not as down in the dumps, I think, as perhaps it maybe once was.
And you think of just how people consume media these days. You can listen to a Diddy song in your headphones on the subway on the way to work, and nobody knows what you're listening to. It's your business whether or not you want to still consume the content that he produces. Do have more updates coming in. The Assistant U.S. Attorney Comey continuing to say, I'm aware of cases, this is as far as whether Sean Combs, what bail, if bail should be set, because he's been found guilty on 2 counts related to the Mann Act, transportation to engage in prostitution. She says, I'm aware of cases involving minors, but we intend to raise relevant conduct at sentencing, the drugs and violence. The judge says, I like the letters from each side. When? A few hours. So we're expecting to hear something related to bail moving, and at least at some point today, potentially. The judge then says, I think that makes sense. Mr. Combs does not want to go back to the MDC, and Mr. Combs is shaking his head. So 1 p.m. letters, and we'll convene in the afternoon. I'll let the parties know when. Mark Agnifilo.
He about to get out. I said, what if that nigga walk out, bro? I told y'all that shit, bro. Like he beat the major charges, bro. They can give him time served and probation for that other shit. But he facing 20. You can get 19 years probation. Thug just got to see, like, they can give you how many other years. I'm just saying. They can give him time served and give his ass 15 years probation like Young Thug.
Have a poll, a big poll result, more than 24,000 of you voting on this. Predictions on the verdict. At the time, we had guilty on some counts at 48%. So you were correct. Guilty on all counts, 36%. Not guilty at 14%. William, I'm going to bring you back in because I asked Candace just what this defense team did well for Sean Diddy Combs, though he is still convicted on 2 pretty serious charges and could end up going to federal prison. But when you look at this defense team, this all-star cast, what did they do that's just a little bit different than the typical defense attorney that someone might get if they don't have the money that Sean Diddy Combs has?
Well, first of all, what you just said is probably the most important part of it.
What'd you say, bro? I wasn't even looking at the chat. You said, can I talk about Carmen? What happened? What happened? Let's check the update. Hold on. They should be walking out any minute. And giving the official. Let me see. Man, that nigga Diddy done did it. He done did the impossible. They said, oh yeah, they said, okay, so after they just read that, they said the judge just left the courtroom. The gallery had a loud clapping and cheering. Everybody was clapping and cheering from his family and shit. Yeah, looking like Diddy done did it.
In doing that,
he beat the worst of it.
Cross-examination of the government's witnesses, they were able to sort of put on a show.
Yeah, I think dealing with the FBI, that's a lot, bro. The FBI they don't play no games, you know.
Witnesses against the government, and that's the key to cross-examination. Is when you have these witnesses who are testifying against your client,
you can consider it like on a hood nigga would consider him like if he was a hood nigga, you consider this like you're not beating the charge, but you beat the worst of it. Like he was facing 30 years to life, you know what I'm saying? And he's found guilty of none of the sex trafficking and none of the RICO. Biggest parts of it that they was the main things. But prostitution, transportation, bro. Diddy about to come home. Y'all niggas gonna see him walk out.
Again, for you here in just a moment, just in case you're just joining us, trying to figure out what's going on. I can tell you that count 1, racketeering conspiracy, that was not guilty. Sex trafficking of
Good morning, Jazz. Good morning. Good morning.
Sex trafficking of the victim,
Susan
Jane, not guilty, but guilty counts on both related to guilty verdicts on both counts related to transportation to engage in prostitution. And we are breaking down exactly what this means. Court right now has been adjourned until this afternoon as the prosecution and defense are trying to figure out what is going to happen to Sean Combs ahead of any possible sentence that he could face. He's been staying at the Metro Detention Center since his arrest in September of last year. The defense is arguing $1 million bond, let Sean Combs go home, but then the prosecution saying, hey, he was still convicted. He needs to stay in custody ahead of whatever possible sentence, which there could be a sentence that puts Sean Combs in federal prison. So that part of the story is not done just yet, but we're expecting to learn a little more about what could happen ahead of sentencing this afternoon. Another update just coming in here. After the judge left the courtroom, from the gallery, there was a loud clapping and cheering as Sean Combs is led back into the holding cell. Candace, I think of yesterday when the partial verdict came back. We put up that sketch, and it was for the first time, at least that I saw in a sketch, that Sean Combs looked concerned. To think of less than 24 hours later, it is this situation that he's in. I keep asking for your reaction because it's just incredible to think when you look back on this case that was a strong one, that many people believed, a strong one by the prosecution. One question I have is why not call more witnesses? He's facing all these civil lawsuits for people saying that he did a lot of the things that Cassie Ventura and Jane accused him of. Why were there not more victims, that could have potentially bolstered the prosecution's case more?
Well, listen, we are going to find more about Gina. I think that is one of the instances where people.
Let's go. Let's go and see if they came out yet. They ain't come out yet. Let me see something real quick. Hold on. They don't got the. Let me see. Let's go over here with it. Fuck it. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. Top of the top. Good morning to everybody. Diddy's officially not guilty of the RICO, not guilty of sex trafficking, but he is guilty of transportation for prostitution. And I'm like, he still faces 20 years, but they could give him. He's never been in prison before. He ain't no career criminal. They're gonna give him probation and time served. I'm telling y'all. I'm telling you, they're gonna give him probation and for those type of charges and time served, bro. He's going to be walking out pretty much today. Pretty much. That's going to be I'm telling you. He probably ain't going to be able to get on Instagram or no shit like that and make no public statements. But maybe he will. I don't know.
Should be releasing Sean Combs. He's done a lot of time. He's not looking at life-altering sentence where he's going to flee and is a danger to other people. He hasn't been convicted of any of these brutalizing underlying acts that establish a RICO. He has not been convicted of force, fraud, or coercion for sex trafficking.
What up, Juice? What up?
Let him out.
All right, we appreciate your insight. We want to get right back down to the federal courthouse where Lisa Evers has joined Arthur Chien. Lisa has been inside the courtroom all throughout the trial on a daily basis. Lisa, first of all, thanks for joining us here. What can you tell us about what was going on inside that courtroom during the verdict?
They're asking you what's been going on during the verdict today.
Okay, well, first of all, when the verdict was read, of course, the biggest concern was what was that one charge, that RICO charge that Sean Diddy Combs was facing. This has been the concern throughout this trial because that is the one that carries the heaviest potential sentence. Now, let's just give you an idea of what's happening at the latest. The latest right now is that the prosecutors have asked for a couple of hours to try to figure out whether or not Combs can get bail. So he was convicted on two counts of the transportation for prostitution. And the fact of the matter is that's the least of all the charges. It's still a very serious charge. So he remains in custody. And even though the family got good news, they were cheering, they were clapping, they were applauding in the courtroom. They've been praying throughout, and a big showing of family members, including even Baby Love's mother, Dana Tran, here in court we've seen this week, along with Combs' mother, the sons, the daughters, and other family members and very, very close friends. But what's happening now is he can't just walk right out that door here. And there's a huge crowd of hundreds of people outside the courthouse right now ready to express themselves in whatever way they are in support or in dismay at this particular verdict. So I think one of the things is that now the Combs, now Combs has got to figure out what's going to happen next. He won't know for a couple of hours. Shout
out to everybody in the chat, man. Please smash that like. Good morning. Smash that like. The verdict is in.
If he's granted bail, there's a whole procedure in federal court that they have to go through in order to grant bail to anybody. And there has to be, I'm sure they have done they have previous information from before, but it'll be like, if he's out on bail, where is he going to live? Will he be living in New York? Usually when they grant bail in a case like this in the Southern District, they require the person who is given bail to reside within the Southern District. That means he would have to have a residence here in New York City or in the 5 5 counties that encompass the Southern District, some of the suburban counties. And so that's still the big question mark. Since this was the lesser charge, obviously Mark Agnifilo, his lead attorney, Combs' lead defense attorney throughout this whole case, who has maintained he is not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. He absolutely wanted Combs to just be able to walk out of here with.
Hey, look, how you think he gonna feel about the people who never spoke up for him? Jay-Z, all the people that he considered his close acquaintances and friends. What's up with Gene Deal? Oh, this gonna be a shit storm right here. This is gonna be a shit storm.
What they will do is they'll present their motion, and then they'll present their motion, and then the judge will decide on that. So in the meantime, you know, he was in a holding cell in the federal courthouse right here, and so we'll be finding out, you know, in a couple of hours, maybe a little bit sooner, about what this whole bail situation is, the bail request is. And let me bring in my colleague right now, Arthur Chien. And Arthur, this is quite a shock for a lot of people, although there have been attorneys that have been saying this the whole time, that this was the one count that they thought that the RICO charge from the very beginning was a stretch, because it was a very aggressive charge, as many lawyers in the legal community felt, but that this transportation for prostitution was going to be the toughest one, and 2 counts of this is what he was found guilty of. Everything else cleared, so that's a pretty big victory for Combs.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things to cover. One of them is that maybe the judge is not going to ask for motions from either the prosecutors or defense. Maybe he feels like they've said enough in the court right now to make that decision, because a lot of times, especially federal judges, will give days before rendering their decision. The fact that he says he's going to be back in a few hours, he might not even want those motions. He thinks he might have enough to make that decision here now. And in court, he asks Sean Diddy Combs, I take it you don't want to go back to MDC, right? And Combs apparently shook his head in a very exaggerated motion and put his hands together in a praying motion, indicating he does not want to go back. He's made no secret. He doesn't like it there. He's offered up money before, all kinds of things.
Well, Arthur, also, as you know, MDC, we've done stories on this here on Fox 5 News. MDC is one of the most notorious federal detention centers. It's called a detention center and jail because there are people like Combs who were in there not convicted of any crime yet. They were awaiting their trial. They've had all kinds of problems in there between violence, between the actual physical conditions, and even being in the special ward that he was in. There, it still was, you know, he was denied his freedom. And for somebody like Combs that had homes all over the place, had his own jet, he could fly off to the islands if he wanted to for the weekend, and you know, it had to be a huge psychological hit as well.
Right, and one would have to imagine that the judge right now is trying to decide whether or not favoritism is something that he would show if he let Mr. Combs out. But just out of curiosity, and just to throw this into the mix, we were looking at what happened. This sort of triggered a memory with the former New York.
Hold on, let me see. My nigga Uda, shout out Uda. I'm gonna go to Uda because I see Uda live right now too. Shout out Uda on go. Let me go over Uda because he right there on ground zero type shit, right? Here we go. Uda outside right now. Let's see what they talk about on the ground with it. Shout out Uda. Y'all go sub up to Uda, man. He been covering this case between him and like academics. Them niggas been covering the fuck out this case on some hip hop, on the hip hop side of it, man. And he been on the ground. Shout out Uda. That nigga's on the ground with it. Charles BS didn't clear your dog name. Oh, Meek Millie. Boy, but I'm talking about the people who ain't speak up for Diddy, who is his real, he considered them real friends, and boy.
Can't take your style, man. I already jacked your sauce. I already took your gravy.
Shout out Uda.
That's my man Lester I'm laughing with. My man Lester, Inside Edition, man. Les, Inside Edition was talking with me, joking. My man, he was giving me the curve chip for my shit right here. I said, Les, man, come on, man. Oh, look, that's the family right here coming right now, look.
Make way. You know Uda got a spot.
Facts of life. Let's not do this twice. My family just got found not guilty, homie. I'm celebrating. Hold up. Where's Charlucci? I need a shirt out that van right now, too. Tell him give me a shirt out that van. I can't roll my weed up yet.
They won't let him out today, though.
No. Remember, he still got time. He got found guilty. But if he was, they'd have let him out from the jail.
He can appeal it, too, though, right?
Of course he can. But you know what I'm saying? But look, if he'd have got found guilty, not guilty, he'd have went to the jail, and they'd have released him from
sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it's the American way. When it's sex, drugs, and hip hop, it's a RICO. So there was a strong sentiment about that those charges did not fit the alleged crimes that he was, accused of. So we'll see. And he's lost so much already as a result of this, and we'll see what happens today in terms of the bail.
Right, and maybe his lawyers might argue, well, when Elliot Spitzer faced the same issue, he wasn't even prosecuted, right? This could come up in part of their argument with the judge and say, Elliot Spitzer never even had to come in here. Why is it that we're still holding on to Sean Diddy Combs?
Well, no, I think so too, but also, and that whole Spitzer, you're talking about the Spitzer case, that whole thing started because according to law enforcement sources that were very close, investigators that worked on that case, they found out about Elliot Spitzer because of a wiretap that they had a warrant to put on this one of the Manhattan escort services, and then his name came up, and then that's what started that whole that whole prosecution, and also him leaving leaving office.
Right. Now, we don't want to start problems, but it's worth noting.
Right, exactly.
This angle,
so right now, just to let everybody know, in case you're just joining us, Sean Diddy Combs found guilty of the two most minor counts in this actual case, the transportation for prostitution, the RICO, which was the biggie that the jury said they were undecided about yesterday. That one was not guilty. The sex trafficking, the 2 counts of sex trafficking, not guilty. So in terms of Combs, from what he was looking at, this is a very good picture, but he remains behind bars. I'm not behind bars, I should say in custody at this point. He's in custody as they figure out what the bail situation is going to be, because he was found guilty on these 2 charges. There's going to be various legal motions, which we're going to find out in just a short time, what those options are for the defense, what are the next steps for the defense. But this is not over, because there's other indications too that as a result of this trial, as a result of the many and very lengthy and very exhaustive FBI and Homeland Security investigations that were underway, that there may be other charges brought against other people. Who knows that? But right now, the fact of the matter is,
the family is coming out right now. We saw his mother, his 2 children, his son.
And you could hear some cheers outside the courthouse as lots of people we've been talking about have been there watching. But they're the first people that we know that were in the courtroom that have come out since the verdict was announced, and we talked about it. And they've talked about what the possible sentencing may be.
Now, here's what's interesting. Okay. They're coming out. Having been one of those reporters in the pit, trust me, we're yelling questions right now. Mrs. Combs, Janice Combs, anything that you can say. What can you tell us? Because they haven't said anything in all of the times that we've been seeing them come through. They just walk straight in. They've been holding hands.
It looks like they're not going to do it now because they passed the podium with all the microphones.
Right, exactly. All right, you see a 4th person here on the set, Seth Zuckerman. He's a former prosecutor, current defense attorney, and a guy with some insight as to what the timeline is going to be here for the rest of the day. First of all, thanks for joining us.
Of course, Kirk.
All right, explain to us what we can look forward to.
Sure. So the defense made a bail application at the conclusion of the jury's reading of the charges. So as everybody knows, and just to catch everyone up to speed, Combs was found not guilty of the first count, which was the RICO racketeering count, and found not guilty of both of the sex trafficking counts. He was only found guilty of the transportation for prostitution count, which is under the Mann Act. Those are the 2 most minor counts. He faces up to 10 years on each of those counts for a maximum of 20 years, but it's unlikely he's going to do that much time. So upon the jury exiting the courtroom, the defense made a motion for Combs to be released, to be on bail, and their bail application was $1 million bond with travel to New York, Florida, and LA. And then he would live at his home on Star Island. And the judge said, well, I'm not going to decide it at this very moment. I need papers, and asked both sides to submit letters by 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Hey, Seth, while you're explaining that, I just want to tell our audience what you're looking at. There was a big bus outside the courthouse. That is the bus the family just got on. And as you can see, there are lots of people, supporters, well-wishers, people who are just curious on the street, and a gaggle of press that are looking for some kind of, interview with.
We're yelling questions.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. We're shouting them out from that pit right there, because that's where they keep us, off to the side. So we're nowhere near the podium. We're there as they walk by us, and we have the mics out there asking anything you want to say, anything you want to say.
Okay, and that's the door again. But get back to 1 o'clock today.
Yeah. So 1 o'clock today, the judge asked for letters, and then they're going to reconvene. He didn't say a certain time. He wants each party to submit letters by 1 p.m. this afternoon, and then I assume sometime around 3 or 4 o'clock, the parties will reconvene in court, and the judge will make his determination as to bail. And it's at that point that I would expect the family and the lawyers to speak.
Seth, what is the probability of letting him out? You say that these are minor charges. Other people say these are still major charges to be, you know.
They're not minor, they're the lesser of the five.
Right.
Yes, they still face up to 10 years on each of them.
Right.
You know, in most other cases, what would a judge do?
In most other cases where it's just a Mann Act transportation for prostitution, someone would be out on bail. It's very unlikely without the other charges that someone would be held in custody. Now, Combs is unique in that he's a flight risk. He's got his own plane. He's got hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So it's a unique situation that the judge has to consider. The judge did ask the prosecutor to submit any cases. I assume the prosecutors will be looking for that and submitting that by the 1 p.m. deadline today. But I do think bail would be appropriate at this point, now that he has only been convicted of the two most minor charges, and bail is usually set in these types of cases, obviously understanding that this is a unique person and he wants to live in Florida. There's some school of thought that maybe they should have proposed that he stay in New York. That may appease the judge a little bit more, find a place for him to stay in New York. But we'll see what happens
And
by
Seth,
the time they
usually when you're out on bail with that kind of thing, you're not allowed to socialize with the people that you have socialized with in the past.
Before you answer that question, I just have to say we're going to continue coverage on My 9. So if you want to stay there at 11 o'clock, just switch it over there if you're watching us on Fox 5.
All right, so we're going to go to My 9 right now? Do we have to
at
run
11
over
o'clock.
there?
No, we don't have to do anything. We will just continue, but I want to let everybody know right now because we're going to go back to regular programming.
We don't have
Fox
to do
5.
anything. We're going to just continue talking.
We'll keep talking to Seth.
We can keep going.
You just get the remote and just put us on My 9.
There we go.
So easy. Okay, getting back. Are they going to limit who he's allowed to, if he's allowed out on bail, limit who he's allowed to hang out with?
So every bail condition is unique, right? And so the judge has to make a determination as to what he's going to permit him to do if he sets him out on bail. Obviously, if he's living in Florida, he'd be with family. If he's traveling to California, he'd be allowed to socialize with certain individuals in California. So it really just depends on the bail situation.
So he can't have like a blowout party tonight, right?
I mean, he could go to a restaurant in New York City. If he gets released, he could go to a restaurant in New York City with his family and friends and celebrate. There would probably be nothing about the bail conditions. He may have a curfew that may be imposed, but there'd be nothing necessarily about the bail conditions that would stop him from going to celebrate with friends.
Would you have to wear any sort of home monitoring device or ankle bracelet? Where does that come into play here?
That's another thing that the judge can set as a condition of the bond. You know, they've proposed $1 million bond. Sometimes pretrial services, as a condition of release, asks that you wear an ankle bracelet.
Right.
And that's certainly possible. That may be what the judge is thinking when he comes back this afternoon in terms of setting bail. He may ask for an ankle monitor in this case, and I think it would be reasonable.
And so, look, obviously the judge, I won't say can do whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants within the law. Are the possibilities, okay, you're asking for California, Florida, and New York. I'm going to let you out, but you can't leave the state of New York. Or you got to go to Florida and stay there, whatever. That he can limit him to one location.
Absolutely, and that happens all the time. That's why I said the judge may be only comfortable with letting him be in New York, and sometimes defense attorneys only propose that because they feel like that will appease the judge. Obviously, that's not the proposal that they put forth here, but the judge could make his own determination and say, look, I'm going to release you, but you have to stay in the confines of New York City and allow him to be in Manhattan only. So that's something that the judge can make when he makes his determination.
Well, Seth, we want to ask you this. You covered this. You were with Lisa Evers last night, and thank you for that, for helping supplant our coverage. Were you surprised at how this went? What was your own take on how this went? Share that with us.
So I'm not surprised. The RICO charge was always the most aggressive charge in this case, right? I think a lot of legal commentators, when that charge was first brought, were a little shocked that they brought that charge against him with this evidence. So I'm not surprised that the RICO charge was hung yesterday and then not guilty today. But what was telling yesterday is the fact that they had a verdict on those 4 charges and they didn't have a verdict on the RICO charge, which led me to believe, well, there must be a not guilty verdict in one of those charges. Because otherwise, if you took those 2 charges together, they would have had 2 of the predicate acts that they needed for the RICO racketeering.
Right.
So I'm not surprised that they reached a verdict on those counts quicker, because those are simpler counts to understand. I'm not surprised that they had it at the same time, and I'm not surprised that it was split. The problem with the sex trafficking count was always that consent is a defense. And Cassie and Jane both testified that they consented to this.
And it also said by fraud, coercion, or force, correct?
Correct. And all of that did not occur here, right? What you had here were women who later, after the fact, didn't like what they had participated in, but they had done so willingly and voluntarily and were in a relationship with him for numerous years. And so I always thought the sex trafficking charge based on the consent defense was also an uphill battle for the prosecution. So when I heard yesterday they were hung on the RICO racketeering and they had a verdict on these 4 counts, I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was split because of the defense to the sex trafficking.
All right, we're getting a little bit more information from the courtroom, and it's going back to the beginning of the day, before the verdict was read. According to the Times, they said that Sean Combs walked out into the courtroom and said to his family, "We got this." He's then reading a printout of Psalm 11. When the first not guilty racketeering count was read, a family member gasped. As the not guilty verdicts for the sex trafficking counts came in, members of the family and his legal team began to cry. Even the legal team began to cry. When the full verdict had been read, Mr. Combs turned to his family and mouthed, "I'm going home."
We'll find out. The judge will determine that later on. Sounds like today. They have to be back in court at 1 o'clock. Let's check in with Lisa Evers again. She's been inside the courtroom on a daily basis, and I understand she's joined by Peter Frankel, who was with us a little bit earlier to kind of break it down from a legal standpoint.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's right, Curtin Rowe. We're here with criminal defense attorney Peter Frankel just to understand kind of the magnitude of what happened here in this particular case, because he's not in the clear yet. He's not going to be walking out the door in the next 10 minutes or even 15 minutes, but we have to find out what the rest of the process is and also what this verdict means for Combs as well. Joining me now is top criminal defense attorney Peter Frankel. Peter, thank you for being with us and helping us understand this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So just to go over the counts for people that are just joining us and checking this out right now, is that he was found not guilty of the RICO, that's the racketeering conspiracy, the big one, not guilty of 2 counts of sex trafficking, but he was found guilty of 2 counts of the transportation for prostitution. As a defense attorney, would you consider that a win?
Oh, it's absolutely a win. It's a huge win. When you factor in that the RICO charge was carrying a mandatory life sentence, the sex trafficking charges, both of them carrying a minimum of 15 years, he's now looking at a charge that has a maximum of 10 years, but the fact that he was acquitted of the other 2 counts, the much more serious ones, is a huge factor in what the judge is going to do here.
So this was basically because with the RICO, he was looking at the possibility of decades, if not life, behind bars, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So what happens now? So they had there was a very dramatic scene in the courtroom when the verdict was read. He's had strong family support, friends from way back when that.
Wow, this nigga Diddy did fake beat the feds. You did?
The whole night, since yesterday, when late yesterday afternoon, when the jury said we have a partial verdict, knowing there was a verdict, but not knowing what they would be facing. Now he's there. The prosecutors have asked for a couple of hours. So what happens next? Since he's cleared of the heavy charges, but he still has. This is still a serious thing the prostitution wants.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think most people expected that he was going to be acquitted of the sex trafficking charges. I think most people thought he was going to be convicted of. That he was going to be acquitted of the sex trafficking charges. I think most people thought he was going to be convicted of everything but the RICO charge. That being said, now that he was acquitted of those more serious charges, the first thing that the defense has to do is try to get him out on bail. And I would remind you that when he was first arrested, the defense team offered a package of some $50 million in property through a bondsman that the judge repeatedly denied.
3 times.
But at this point, with the charges being now, what they've been reduced to and the convictions being what they are, I can't imagine that the court is going to refuse to grant him a bail of that magnitude or even less.
Right. So in terms of right now, he's probably in a holding cell there while they're figuring all of this out. They probably cleared the courtroom, and I mean, because we've been out here, so. At this particular point, so will he be staying in there? And then do they have to present a bail package again now, a new bail package to the judge? In other words, what's the defense doing right now?
So yes, he's in a holding pen right off the side of the courtroom. In a perfect world, what should happen is that the defense and the government should agree on a bail package so that all the judge has to do is rubber stamp it. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes the government will refuse to agree with the defense package, and it's at that point that the defense will have to go directly to the court and say, we've proposed X, the government won't go along with it. Will Your Honor set these bail conditions? And
I just want to say, and Rowan Kurt, when we were in the on Monday inside the courtroom, they had him in that holding cell or holding pen, very close to the courtroom. When the jury would go to deliberate, he would be back there. They'd clear the courtroom, except for the family mostly and the attorneys, and then they bring people back in if there was a note or there was something that they had to all deal with. And Combs, at one point on Monday, he held up 2 books. He turned around. There were a few of us left in the courtroom in the back there, and he turned around. He's holding up 2 books and his pale sweater. One of them was the power of positive thinking, and the other one was the happiness advantage. And it was just him. And we talk about him too. We've become so accustomed to seeing him as a defendant these last 9 months, but he's also was known from the very beginning of his career, his entertainment career, as a great showman, understanding, reading the room and understanding that. What role do you think that played in this defense? Because he really, even though he got admonished by the judge a couple times for gesturing too much and being too emphatic with his physical, his nonverbal cues, shall we say, that he was pretty restrained for Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. He was admonished, and I think his behavior was excellent throughout the trial. I think that's definitely a factor. That's definitely something that a judge will notice, sometimes comment on, if a defendant is not acting appropriately. He told him once, and that was the end of it. So, I think notwithstanding his big personality, he handled the role of defendant during this trial very well.
And then, Peter, in terms of the bail situation right now, just so we understand, so right now, Sean Diddy Combs, from the best that we can determine, is in a holding cell close to the courtroom here in the federal court building in Lower Manhattan. The defense is preparing a bail presentation to the court, right? It has to require a residence during this time within the Southern District, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then what else do they need to give him? What else does Diddy's defense team need to give the judge in order to convince them to give him bail? Because, as you mentioned, he was denied bail 3 times in some pretty hefty bail packages.
Well, and I remember those bail packages, and they included him living in Manhattan with an ankle monitor, with private security, with no visitors able to come in other than family members, no internet access. So they offered a very, very strong bail package originally, which was rejected repeatedly. They could likely offer that again. I don't think they have to go to that point, but certainly it will require him to stay within the Southern District, and I'm sure there'll be some of the other restrictions that they had previously offered.
And then what about in terms of an appeal? Since he got the not guilty on the racketeering and also on the sex trafficking, does the defense start thinking, okay, let's get him out first, and also let's think about, would they be filing any kind of motion today or this afternoon?
Well, there may be motions that are coming in advance of an appeal. What comes to mind for me is the dismissal of, I believe, one of the jurors who the defense strenuously objected to having him dismissed. So items like that could, in fact, be motions that are upcoming. But for the defense, I'm sure the first thing that's on their mind is to get him out with any restrictions that are necessary, and then to move on to whatever motions they may want to make with respect to setting aside the verdict or going forward any appeal that they want to make.
Okay, so how long do you think the whole process will be before we find out today if he's, will we find out today if he's granted bail? They're not going to keep him overnight.
It's very possible. It's very possible that we could find out today that there could be an agreement with respect to a bail package. Remember, court's closed tomorrow and Friday, so that puts him into next week. Maybe an issue, may not, but I'm sure the defense is focused on it right now, and they're trying to get it done.
It's just trying to work out whatever they have to do, because there is paperwork that has to be done, I'm sure, procedurally.
It's not an easy, Lisa, it's not an easy process to get done when there are so many conditions to the bail. So they don't have a lot of time to get it done, but they can fall back on what they tried to offer in the past and get those pieces in place to see if they can make it happen this afternoon.
All right, let's check in with Rowan Kurt. So Rowan Kurt, we're on standby now to see if Diddy is able to get bail and if the judge decides to grant him bail. But any questions for Peter?
Well, no, we've got Seth Zuckerman in here right now, and I know you've had trouble hearing us, but Seth is saying earlier that this motion, that both sides have until 1 o'clock before they file the paperwork, and then after that the judge will decide. So we're not going to have an answer until 3 or 4 o'clock, most likely this afternoon at the very earliest, right, Seth?
That's what I'm hearing.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, the judge has now asked for each side to submit papers by 1 p.m. As to the bail application that the defense has made. And I assume that the judge, after reading the applications, will ask the parties to reconvene at some point this afternoon. So I imagine that would be 3, 4 o'clock while Combs sits in custody at the courthouse. The parties right now are probably diligently working on their letters that they're going to submit to the judge by 1 p.m. And then the judge will bring the parties back later this afternoon.
You think there will be an answer today from the judge, one way or the other?
I think there has to be. I think the judge said to the parties, we were anticipating being here all day. So I'm happy to be here all day to come to this determination. But there has to be an answer because he's got to set a sentencing date to the conviction on the prostitution counts. And he has to decide, is he going to hold Combs in custody until that date, or is he going to release him on the bail conditions that we've discussed and have him come back to court on the sentencing
And
date?
don't forget, court is closed tomorrow for the holiday.
Right.
So it's closed Thursday and Friday. He told the jury they could come back tomorrow, but listen, let's face it, it's an expense. You got to ask now the court officers to come in. There's a whole rigmarole that goes along with opening up something that's supposed to be closed.
Right, that's why it's going to be decided today. The jury's already obviously been discharged. The jury's home. They have nothing to do further with the case. And now it's up to the court to decide the defense's motion on bail, and I assume we'll hear something at least some point this afternoon or early evening.
And set to the point that Curtin Rowe made earlier in regards to the time, he's facing a maximum of 20 because the Mann Act carries 10 and 10. So the judge can go, as Kurt pointed out, either way here. Right?
Correct. So there's a maximum of 20 years that he's facing, 10 years on each count, which he could run consecutive to each other.
Right.
But he could obviously sentence him to something much less. And that's why the bail application has been made, because a general sentence when you're only convicted of a Mann Act violation. Now remember, Combs has no prior convictions.
Right.
He's got no record. And usually a first conviction Mann Act violation is something a lot less than the 10
Like
years
what?
that he faced. In the 3, 4, 5 year range potentially.
And if that's the case, he already served a year.
Correct.
Almost, yes, since September. And they could run them concurrently, or they could do consecutively and add them back to back.
Correct.
So there's still a lot, but we won't know that till down the road. The first question is whether or not he will be released today. Arthur Chien is live outside the courthouse right now with more reaction as we see people, looks like a mini celebration.
Yeah.
Arthur Idala, excuse me, different Arthur.
Yes.
Okay, my
Arthur
apologies.
Idala,
Arthur Idala.
Criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor as well. Arthur, what's going on? We see a lot of people chanting. We see police trying to break it up. Can you describe what's going on out there?
This looks tense.
Well, which Arthur are we going with, Idala or Chen? I don't know, the lawyer or the reporter?
We're going with
because Idala is not at the courthouse, apparently.
I'm not right. I'm not at the courthouse, but I'm going to tell you what's going on behind the scenes. First of all, it gives you guys some insight into how ridiculous the federal court is sometimes. The judge doesn't need papers from both sides to determine whether there should be bail here or not. He has heard so many bail arguments throughout the course of all these proceedings. They just do this in federal court to make it seem like it's more important and it's definitely more majesty around it. He knows what the bail conditions are. He knows what they've asked for. He has all the paperwork, but he's a new judge. He's a very new judge. And the way new judges often react is they take a timeout, as they should, and they go in the back and they talk to maybe Judge Lewis Kaplan, who did the Trump trial, or Judge Stanley Stein, who did the Menendez trial just now. They were both appointed by President Clinton. They've been on the bench for 35 years. He's going to go and talk to them. What do you think? What are your ideas? My guess is they're going to say to him, well, what's your instinct right now? Do you think you're going to send him to jail for 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years? Because if you are, keep him where he is. He's already serving time. He's getting credit for it. Why are you going to let him out just to put him back in? But if you're seriously considering giving him a non-jail disposition and just giving him straight probation, well, then you probably, in the interest of justice, should let him out. I don't see a scenario where this judge, with this case, with this notoriety, giving him no additional jail time. But this charge, the Mann Act, is such a BS charge that almost never gets charged in federal court. So he's in a little bit of a quandary, the judge here. My guess is he's probably going to keep him in for at least the time being, and maybe say, I'll consider this a little bit more down the road. That's a guess.
We're looking at, I have to say, outside the courthouse, where family and friends are animated, and maybe some people who just want to be a part of this moment that are outside. It looked like it got a little heated at one point, but it looks like everything calmed down, and that looks like it could be a family member or a friend going back into the courthouse. So Arthur, are you feeling like when the judge comes back at 1 o'clock with the defense attorney and the prosecutor, that he could already have an answer, and like we may not have to wait till 3, 4 o'clock today for his decision?
Yes, he definitely could. He not only could he should. In other words, come on, Judge. Like, this is what you get paid for. Like, this is why you went through the United States Senate to get confirmed. Like, make a decision. Judges are there to make decisions. And he should already know in his mind what he's going to do. Look, the bottom line is this is a huge win for the defense attorneys. Whether it's a huge win for Sean Combs or not totally remains to be seen. The judge has the ability to say, I heard all of the facts in this case. And even though Mr. Combs was acquitted of the racketeering and the other counts, I am allowed to take that into consideration. And therefore, in an insane scenario, I am sentencing you to the maximum of 10 years on both counts to run consecutively for a sentence of 20 years. And do I think that's going to happen? I don't think so, but it's absolutely legal. He wouldn't win an appeal on that case. So the last chapter of this book, which has so far been very much in the defense, at this point, very much in the defense's favor, it still has to be written on the sentencing. And you will see vigorous sentencing submissions from everyone on both sides about how, it needs to be shown from the prosecutor, he needs to be punished for this as a deterrent to Mr. Combs himself, a general deterrent to society. Everybody's watching this case. It needs to be known that you can't solicit a prostitute or act this way. And the defense are going to be saying, you got a guy in his 50s who's never been in trouble in his life. And even though what came out of trial wasn't very pleasant, the jury found it wasn't criminal, and therefore he should be sentenced on the Mann Act. And if they look at statistics, people getting sentenced on the Mann Act are very, very low. They're not very, very high.
Arthur, it's Antoine. Just a question for you. If you were representing Combs and you had to face this judge to make a case for him to be released, how would you approach this?
I would approach it similarly to the way it has been approached for Mr. Combs in the past. You put up an enormous amount of money, it's ridiculous the amount of money that they talked about. In fact, it was $50 million, and that's being held by the government, right? So the government literally gets to hold that money if the judge requires like cash money, and is making interest on that $50 million where they're holding it for bail. Number one. Number two, it's the electronic devices that start all of these problems. So the judge would insist he has a hardcore landline phone, right, that just has like push button dials, and he cannot communicate with the outside via email, via text messaging, or anything else. There's an ankle monitor. Mr. Combs would have to pay for his own security outside his apartment, and basically create a jail in an apartment somewhere in the Southern District of New York where he can't leave without permission of the judge himself.
You know what I'm thinking about right now? I'm thinking about Cassie Ventura, who 9 months pregnant, about to give birth any day, went through exhausting testifying on that stand for the prosecution and then cross-examination by the defense. I don't know whether she wanted to go through something like this because she had settled a civil suit with Sean Diddy Combs already.
The one person we have heard from, real quick, Arthur, I don't know if you know this, the one person we have heard from is her attorney, whose name escapes me just now, but he has spoken and he said
Doug Wigdor.
Quigdor, thank you.
Yes.
Right. That at least Sean Combs has been held accountable for something, that these are the first charges that he's obviously been accused of, but that he's been convicted of it. So that's the first statement we've had from anybody who's been involved in this.
But she must, she just gave birth. I mean, literally, she was on the stand, and like I think 2 or 3 days later, she gave birth to her baby. And, you know, as someone who went through that process, the hormones get a little crazy. And so I can only imagine what she's feeling right now after she put her heart and soul and really her life out there, that basically her children will be able to read about it one day in explicit details about what she did with Sean Diddy Combs. I mean, she's got to be devastated right now.
But he was convicted of one of the charges against her, so it's not totally scot-free.
And she also got, I believe, in excess of $30 million, which, you know, it maybe eases the pain a little bit. Mr. Wigdor, I'm sure, got a nice hunk of that for his legal fee. But yes, absolutely. And you know who's really got to be devastated is the lead prosecutor, Comey. You know, she is the FBI director, Comey's daughter. By all accounts, she's a very able lawyer in the courtroom. But just so you guys understand, they are never supposed to lose, the feds in the Southern District of New York. They have an over 90% conviction rate of anyone who goes to trial, and they lost on the 2 major counts, the mandatory jail time counts and then the racketeering count, which carried life in prison. Although the sentencing still hangs in the balance, for them internally, this is it's a tremendous defeat to their ego. And to Damian Williams, who was the U.S. attorney who brought these charges for his own notoriety to enhance his own career, it's also a tremendous blow to him and to that whole office.
Arthur, do you have any idea how much this cost? I mean, because like this is what at least a year just gathering evidence and a year preparing for the trial. You know, these things are not cheap. What did this cost the United States, us, taxpayers?
Well, the only saving grace there is, believe it or not, U.S. attorneys do not get paid a lot of money for lawyers of their stature, right? Most of these people have gone to Ivy League colleges, Ivy League law schools, where if they were in the private sector, they would be making millions of dollars. Here, I believe they make $150,000 a year. I think that's their salary. Maybe it's $160,000 now. So even though you're going to have 10 of them working on it, I mean, it's millions of dollars, whether it's $4 million or $5 million. Plus, you have to the cost of housing Mr. Combs in the federal facility. They probably have, I don't know, 30 FBI agents working on this, 10 prosecutors working on this, 5 paralegals working on this. You know, you have the best and the brightest in the office, in any prosecutor's office, but the Southern District is the mother court, the creme de la creme. So it costs us millions and millions of dollars to do this. And this is where they determine their resources are best spent to go after Sean Combs, not to go after organized crime, not to go after financial crimes, etc. But that's when you're the prosecutor, you're entitled to make those decisions. And that was the decision that was made here.
And to be clear, once again, he was found guilty on 2 of the charges, 3 found not guilty. I want to bring Seth back in, Seth Zuckerman. And, you know, you were listening here. You had a chance to hear what Arthur was saying. And, you know, the big thing that he brings up about the sentencing was the potential for an ankle bracelet, no texting, no communication with other people, a huge bail, maybe like $50 million, something like that, to try and keep him here. Do you think it's going to take that in order to do it? Or might he be like the judge? Might the judge be like he said, already made up his mind?
Well, that's not what the defense has proposed here, Kurt, right? So the defense has proposed a $1 million bond with travel to 3 states. And that could be very concerning to the judge here. The judge clearly was not ready to make up his mind on the spot. He said, I'm not ready to decide this in the moment. And that, to me, is not a good sign for Combs, right? Because he should have been released, as Arthur said, right? He should be out on bond immediately based on a conviction of only these charges. And so the fact that the judge wanted papers and wanted to hear from the government, do you have case law that shows on cases of a Mann Act violation, on a prostitution violation, that you can keep people in custody without bond? So that's concerning. The fact that the judge wanted a couple hours to think about it is concerning. But I'm with Arthur in the sense that there should be bail. He should be released today. Obviously, $50 million is not what the defense has proposed here. They proposed only a $1 million bond. I don't know what that says about Mr. Combs' finances or something else. But the fact that they want him to live out of state is probably going to give the judge the most pause, that they want him to reside on Star Island and travel to New York and LA and Florida.
One other thing that Arthur said was that he believes most likely the judge is probably consulting with other judges who've gone through this. Take us behind the scenes. I mean, might that be happening right now? Does that happen?
Absolutely. This judge has only been on the bench for a couple of years. He was appointed by Biden, and he's not a very experienced criminal judge. And so I think a lot of the decisions in this case.
Okay. I guess we're gonna be waiting from here on out to see what's the final conclusion of Diddy getting bond. But that could take a lot of more hours. I'm gonna go ahead and get off here. Shout out to everybody that pulled up. Diddy didn't beat the feds, bro. He got the two lesser charges he got convicted of, but the main crazy shit he didn't get convicted of. I appreciate everybody that pulled up all the mods, man. I will see y'all later. I gotta go handle some shit, man. Snow gang or no gang.